Fleet Admiral Jack Cameron stood on the bridge of his flagship as 500 human warships dropped out of hyperspace around the Kythera homeworld. The massive armada represented every vessel humanity could build, steal, or convert during 4 years of total war. Each ship carried weapons designed to kill every living thing on the planet below. "All ships report ready for planetary assault," his communications officer announced. The young woman's voice was steady despite the magnitude of what they were about to do. Biological warfare teams confirmed payload deployment ready. Jack had lost his wife and 2 children in the first Kythera attack on New Denver. He had spent 4 years learning to hate with scientific precision. Today, that hatred would finally be satisfied. Begin orbital bombardment. Target all defensive installations first. The space around Kythera erupted in fire as human weapons met alien defenses. Orbital fortresses that had protected the homeworld for centuries crumbled under concentrated bombardment from crystal crackers and hybrid human Kythera weapons. The planet's energy shields flickered and failed as their power sources were systematically destroyed. Hegemon Zalthar commanded the Kythera defense from his palace bunker deep beneath the planet's surface. His remaining military advisors showed him tactical displays that painted a hopeless picture. The human fleet outnumbered his forces 3-1 and carried weapons that his species had no defense against. "Request immediate assistance from the outer colonies," he ordered his communications staff. "All available ships must return to defend the homeworld." But the outer colonies had already fallen or been abandoned. Human terror fleets had systematically destroyed every Kythera installation outside their core systems. The scattered survivors had fled deeper into space, carrying only the supplies they could carry. The mighty hegemony that had ruled for 1,000 years was reduced to a single WRLD. Dr. Amanda Price monitored the biological weapon deployment from her laboratory ship. The engineered viruses were already spreading through the planet's atmosphere, carried by air currents to every population center. Her masterpiece would kill billions of aliens over the next 72 hours. "Viral saturation complete," she reported to Admiral Cameron. "Full planetary infection achieved. Estimated time to complete population elimination is 3 days. The virus was her most sophisticated creation. It attacked the silicon-based cellular structure that gave Kythera their natural armor and strength. But instead of killing quickly, it caused their crystal bodies to grow uncontrollably until the aliens were crushed by their own expanding skeletons. It was designed to be as terrifying as it was lethal. Captain Sophie Clark led the marine assault on the planet's surface. Her landing craft descended through burning skies toward cities that were already dying from biological weapons. The Kythera ground forces that tried to resist were equipped with weapons designed for fighting other civilized species, not humans who had learned to fight like demons. "All units advance to primary objectives," she ordered her battalion commanders. "No prisoners, no mercy, no survivors. We finish this today." The Marines wore powered armor that incorporated captured Kythera technology with human weapon systems. They moved through the alien cities like reapers, killing everything they found with methodical efficiency. Crystal spires that had stood for millennia collapsed under concentrated fire from weapons designed specifically to destroy them. Colonel Ray Brooks led his terror squads into the government district where Kythera leaders had tried to organize a final defense. His soldiers carried weapons that caused spectacular deaths visible from orbit. They wanted the remaining aliens to see exactly what happened to enemies of humanity. "Set up the broadcast equipment," he ordered his technical team. "I want every surviving Kythera to watch their leaders die slowly and painfully." The execution of captured alien officials was transmitted across what remained of Kythera space. Human soldiers used crystal crackers set to their most agonizing settings while describing in detail how humanity would hunt down every member of their species. The broadcasts continued for hours as the alien government was systematically eliminated. Sarah Brooks commanded the assault on civilian areas where millions of Kythera had tried to hide from the orbital bombardment. Her irregular forces moved through residential districts with flamethrowers and chemical weapons that left nothing alive behind them. They had learned efficiency from 4 years of practice. Clear every building, she instructed her fighters. Check every basement and shelter. Nothing escapes. Nothing survives. The civilians, they found, were already sick from Dr. Price's biological weapons. Many were dying as their crystal bodies expanded beyond the limits of survival. But Sarah's forces killed them anyway because leaving survivors would have violated their mission parameters. Extinction meant everyone deep beneath the planet's surface hegemon. Zolther waited in his command bunker with the last few hundred members of his government. Surface reports painted a picture of complete disaster. His military forces were gone. His cities were burning and his people were dying from weapons that attacked their very biology. Perhaps we should consider surrender, suggested one of his surviving advisors. The humans might show mercy if we offer complete capitulation. Zolther's response was a harsh laugh that sounded like breaking crystal. You have not been paying attention. They do not want surrender. They want extinction. This is not conquest. This is extermination. The bunker's defenses were designed to withstand any conceivable attack but human. Engineers had studied Kithra construction techniques for 4 years. They knew exactly where to place charges for maximum structural damage. The complex that had been built to last forever collapsed in a series of controlled explosions. Colonel Brooks personally led the assault through the burning ruins to find the alien leadership. His soldiers fought past automated defenses and through clouds of toxic gas until they reached the innermost chambers where Zolther waited with his final bodyguards. Hegemon Zolther, Brooks said as his troops secured the chamber, I have a message from humanity. The alien leader stood 8 feet tall in his ceremonial crystal armor, but his black eyes showed only defeat. He had ruled an empire that spanned dozens of star systems and commanded military forces that had never known defeat. Now he faced extinction at the hands of a species he had dismissed as vermin. Speak your message, Zolther replied with what dignity he could manage. The message is this, Brooks said as he raised his crystal cracker. You started a war you could not finish. We finish what you started. The weapon's energy beam struck Zolther's center mass and began dissolving his crystalline body from within. The process was slow and agonizing as designed. The last ruler of the Kithra hegemony died screaming while human soldiers recorded every moment for posterity. Dr. Stone's teams deployed their final weapon as the planetary assault reached its conclusion. The silicon-eating virus spread through Kithra cities and infrastructure, dissolving the crystal technology that had taken millennia to develop. Ancient spires collapsed into dust while orbital installations fell from their parking orbits as structural failures cascaded through their systems. Admiral Cameron watched from orbit as the homeworld of a 1,000-year empire died in flames and biological dissolution. Cities that had housed billions of aliens were reduced to smoking craters filled with crystalline ash. The planet's atmosphere glowed with the fires of complete destruction. All objectives completed, he reported to Earth. Command, Kithra homeworld is sterilized. No life signs detected planet-wide. Estimated enemy casualties, 4.7 billion. Human casualties, 12,000. President Hayes received the final report in his command bunker and authorized the last phase of the extermination campaign. Human fleets spread throughout. Former Kithra space hunting down the scattered survivors who had fled their dying worlds. The hunt would continue for months until every last alien was found and killed. The war that began with Kithra arrogance ended with their complete extinction. The species that had conquered 47 civilizations was wiped from existence by enemies they had dismissed as primitive insects. Their empire became empty space dotted with the burned-out hulks of dead worlds. Humanity inherited an empire, spanning dozens of star systems, but they also inherited the knowledge of what they had become. The species that had reached for the stars with dreams of peace and exploration had proven themselves capable of genocide on a galactic scale. We are no longer the same species that started this war, President Hayes announced in his final address. We have learned that survival requires the will to do terrible things to terrible enemies. Let this be a lesson to any species that considers threatening humanity. We do not start wars, but we finish them completely. The galaxy's other species took note of humanity's victory and the methods used to achieve it. Word spread through interstellar space about the new power that had emerged from the ashes of the Kithra hegemony. They had demonstrated that extinction was always an option for those who chose war over peace. In the years that followed, human colonies spread across former Kithra worlds while xenobiologists studied the remnants of alien civilization. They found evidence of 47 previous species that had been conquered and eliminated by the Kithra over the past millennium. General Patricia Young stood in the command center watching live feeds from the assault on Christak Prime. The Kithra fortress world had been their primary military base for over 2 centuries, but now it burned under human orbital bombardment. Smoke rose from crystal cities while alien civilians fled through streets littered with the bodies of their defenders. "Deploy the fear squads," Patricia ordered her ground commanders. "I want every surviving Kithra to see what happens when you start a war with humans." The fear squads were special units trained to maximize psychological impact. They carried captured Kithra civilians through the ruins while broadcasting their screams over enemy communication channels. The sound of dying alien children echoed across the planet as human forces advanced methodically through the burning cities. Captain Ben Wright's Terror fleet had perfected the art of psychological warfare. His ships arrived at Kithra worlds, broadcasting recordings of previous battles where human forces had used chemical weapons to cause excruciating pain before death. The transmissions continued for hours before the actual attack began, allowing fear to spread through the alien population. "Fear is more effective than any weapon," Wright explained to his crew as they approached another target. "By the time we reach orbit, half the enemy garrison will have already fled or surrendered." The chemical weapons program had expanded under Dr. Price's direction. Human scientists competed to develop new compounds that would cause different types of suffering to Kithra physiology. Some attacks targeted the aliens' crystal-based nervous system, causing paralysis, while leaving them fully aware of their surroundings. Others caused their natural armor to grow uncontrollably until it crushed them from within. "The beauty of these weapons is their versatility," Dr. Price reported to the military leadership. "We can choose exactly how each enemy dies based on the tactical situation. Quick death for military necessity, slow death for psychological impact." Colonel Ray Brooks led the ground assault on Kithra population centers with forces that had been trained to show no mercy. His soldiers wore armor decorated with the bones of alien victims and carried weapons designed to cause maximum suffering rather than quick death. They had become something that would have horrified the humans who started this war. "Remember your training," Brooks told his troops before each attack. "These creatures killed our families and destroyed our worlds. Every one of them deserves to die slowly and painfully. Show them the same mercy they showed us." The assault teams used tactics that violated every human law of war that had existed before the Kithra invasion. They took alien civilians hostage and forced them to lead attacks on military positions. They used captured enemy soldiers as human shields while advancing through defended areas. They executed prisoners in front of other captives to break their will to resist. Sarah Brooks had evolved from a resistance fighter into something much darker. She commanded units that specialized in infiltration and terror attacks deep behind enemy lines. Her fighters dressed as Kithra civilians and carried concealed weapons designed to cause spectacular deaths in crowded areas. "We've learned to think like they do," she explained to new recruits. "The Kithra respect only strength and fear only pain. We give them both in equal measure." One of her most effective tactics involved captured alien communication equipment. Human infiltrators would broadcast false orders that sent Kithra forces into carefully prepared ambushes. The aliens' rigid command structure made them vulnerable to this type of deception because they never questioned orders from apparent superiors. The bioweapon program had reached new levels of sophistication. Dr. Price's team had developed viruses that could be programmed to activate weeks or months after infection. Entire Kithra populations could be infected during brief human raids and then die slowly over time while human forces moved on to other targets. "We're not just winning battles," she reported during a strategy meeting. "We're ensuring that every world we touch becomes uninhabitable for their species. Even if they somehow drive us away, these planets will remain death traps for centuries." Intelligence gathered from captured aliens revealed the location of the Kythera homeworld for the first time. The planet Kythera was heavily defended and contained the species' primary government, military command, and cultural centers. More importantly, it held nearly half of their remaining population. Commander Lisa Torres led the intelligence analysis team that studied the homeworld's defenses. What they found was both encouraging and disturbing. The Kythera had concentrated their remaining military forces to protect their birth planet, leaving other worlds lightly defended. "They're making the same mistake every species makes when facing extinction," Torres explained to the Joint Chiefs. "They're trying to save everything instead of accepting losses to preserve something. It makes them vulnerable to a concentrated attack." Captain Sophie Clark commanded the deep space reconnaissance missions that mapped Kythera space in preparation for the final assault. Her ships used captured alien technology to penetrate enemy sensor networks and gather detailed intelligence on military installations and population centers. "Their entire civilization is built around the homeworld," she reported after completing the survey. "Destroy Kythera and the rest of their empire will collapse within months. They don't have the infrastructure to maintain their technology without the core manufacturing facilities." The preparations for the final assault took 8 months. Human shipyards worked around the clock to build the largest fleet in their species' history. Every vessel was equipped with the most advanced weapons available, including improved crystal crackers, biological warfare systems, and psychological warfare equipment. President Hayes addressed the human survivors in a final broadcast before the assault began. "We did not choose this war, but we will finish it. The Kythera wanted to teach us our place in the galaxy. Our place is wherever we choose to stand, and anything that challenges that choice will share their fate." Hegemon Zalthar made increasingly desperate attempts to negotiate as human forces massed for the final attack. He offered complete withdrawal from human space, massive reparations, and even suggested that humanity could help the Kythera conquer other species. Each offer was rejected without consideration. "There can be no peace with a species that chose genocide," Admiral Foster replied to his final diplomatic message. "You started this war by trying to exterminate us. We will end it by succeeding where you failed." The Kythera homeworld defenses included orbital fortresses that had protected the planet for 500 years. Energy shields surrounded the major cities, and underground bunkers held the most important government and military leaders. It was designed to withstand any conceivable attack by conventional military forces, but humanity was no longer fighting conventionally. The assault fleet carried weapons that could poison entire continents and viruses, designed to dissolve crystal-based architecture. They had learned to fight without honor, mercy, or restraint because that was what victory required. As the human Armada approached Kythera, long-range sensors detected massive alien fleet movements. The Kythera were gathering every available ship to defend their homeworld. It would be the largest space battle in galactic history, and humanity intended to make it the last. "All ships report ready for final assault," Admiral Foster announced from the bridge of her flagship. "Remember what they did to our colonies. Remember New Denver, Grant's Landing, and Riverside. Today we finish what they started. The war that began with Kythera arrogance and human weakness was about to end with alien extinction and human dominance. The species that had reached for the stars with dreams of peace had learned to wage war more effectively than any of their enemies imagined possible. The final battle would determine whether the galaxy belonged to those who showed mercy or those who showed none." Admiral Helen Foster stood on the bridge of her flagship, the converted Kythera battleship Vengeance, and watched enemy vessels flee before her fleet. The ship had once belonged to the aliens, but now it served humanity with weapons designed specifically to kill its former masters. The war had entered its 3rd year and everything had changed. "Enemy formation breaking apart," reported her tactical officer, a young man named Brad who had learned to fly by fighting Kythera interceptors. They're running for the jump point, Helen smiled coldly. Let them run. Send word to the interceptor squadrons. Hunt down any ships that escape. I want no survivors to report back to their commanders. The human fleet had grown from the desperate collection of survivors that began the war. Now they flew ships that combined human innovation with stolen alien technology. Each vessel was crewed by people who had lost everything to the Kithra and wanted nothing more than revenge. Captain Sophie Clark commanded a squadron of converted alien vessels that specialized in deep space attacks. Her ships appeared without warning in Kithra territory, destroyed everything they found, and vanished before reinforcements could arrive. The aliens called her the Ghost Captain, but Sophie preferred a simpler title. She was a killer. Target the supply convoy, she ordered her pilots during a raid on a Kithra logistics route. No ships escape, no survivors. Make sure their cargo is destroyed completely. The attack lasted only minutes but left 6 alien transports burning. In space, the Kithra convoy had been carrying zenithium crystals to fuel their war effort. Now the precious energy source drifted uselessly through vacuum while human ships moved on to their next target, down in the research labs. Dr. Amanda Price watched her latest biological weapon consume a Kithra test subject. The virus attacked the aliens' crystal-based cellular structure and caused their bodies to dissolve from within. It was not a quick death, but that was intentional. Fear was as important as firepower in this war. Deployment successful on Target 7, her assistant reported. Complete cellular breakdown achieved in 4 hours. The subject remained conscious throughout the process. Dr. Price nodded with satisfaction. Begin mass production immediately. I want enough to infect every Kithra world in their home sector. The bioweapon program had expanded far beyond simple virus research. Human scientists were developing diseases tailored to cause specific types of suffering. Some killed quickly while others took days or weeks. Some caused madness before death while others left the victim aware of everything happening to their dissolving body. Colonel Dan Murphy led the first deployment of the new bioweapons during an assault on a Kithra fortress world. His Marines wore protective suits while they released the engineered viruses into the planet's atmosphere. Within hours, the alien garrison was dying in agony. Beautiful work, Murphy reported as he watched Kithra soldiers collapse in the streets below. Their armor can't protect them from something that attacks their biology directly. Recommend immediate deployment on all occupied worlds. The sight of their comrades melting from within broke something fundamental in Kithra morale. These aliens had conquered 47 species over 1,000 years, but they had never faced an enemy that used such weapons. The very concept of biological warfare was foreign to their rigid military doctrine, hegemon. Zoltha received increasingly desperate reports from his field commanders. Human forces were advancing deep into Kithra space, and their tactics were becoming more ruthless with each victory. The aliens who had started this war believing in their own superiority now fled in terror before human battle fleets. Request permission to negotiate with the humans, begged War Commander Vex after losing 3 star systems in a single week. Their weapons are beyond our experience. Our soldiers refuse to fight when they know they will die slowly and painfully. Zoltha rejected the request with crystalline fury. The hegemony does not negotiate with inferior species. Send the reserve fleets from the core worlds. Crush them with overwhelming numbers. But the reserve fleets found themselves facing an enemy that no longer fought by any recognizable rules. Human pilots used kamikaze attacks not as desperate last resorts, but as calculated tactical weapons. They would ram alien ships at precisely the right moment to cause maximum damage to entire formations. Commander Lisa Torres had been studying intercepted Kithra communications for months. She discovered that the aliens had a rigid command structure that depended on constant contact between ships and their base commanders. Disrupting those communications caused immediate confusion and panic. Target their communication arrays first. She instructed her electronic warfare specialists. Cut them off from their commanders and they become easy prey. They don't know how to think for themselves. The strategy worked perfectly during the liberation of the agricultural world greenfield. Kithara forces that had occupied the planet for 2 years suddenly found themselves unable to coordinate their defense. Human ground troops equipped with crystal crackers and bioweapons swept through their positions like a plague. Sarah Brooks had evolved from a resistance leader into something much more dangerous. She commanded irregular forces that used every dirty trick humans could imagine. Her fighters dressed as civilians, hid weapons in children's toys, and used captured alien equipment to infiltrate enemy positions. "They want to play at being conquerors," she told her followers while preparing for another raid. "Let's show them what happens when you conquer a species that specializes in killing." The raid targeted a Kithara administrative center where alien bureaucrats processed resources stolen from human worlds. Sarah's team infiltrated the facility disguised as maintenance workers and planted explosive devices throughout the building. The blast killed 300 aliens and destroyed years of occupation records. Human forces had also learned to use captured Kithara against their own species. Prisoners were given a choice between slow death from bioweapons or cooperation with human intelligence services. Most chose cooperation and provided detailed information about alien military capabilities and strategic planning. "Their entire military doctrine is based on intimidation," explained Dr. Kevin Stone after analyzing interrogation reports. "They've never fought an enemy that refused to be intimidated. They literally don't know how to handle sustained resistance." Captain Ben Wright pioneered the use of psychological warfare on a massive scale. His task force of modified alien ships carried specialized equipment for broadcasting human messages throughout Kithara space. The transmissions included recordings of alien death screams and detailed descriptions of how various bioweapons killed their victims. "We want them to know exactly what's coming," Wright explained to his crew. "Fear is our best weapon now. Every Kithara who hears these broadcasts will think twice before fighting." The psychological campaign was devastatingly effective. Entire alien garrisons surrendered rather than face human assault forces. Others simply abandoned their positions and fled deeper into Kithara territory. The species that had built an empire on fear was learning what it felt like to be afraid. President Robert Hayes received regular reports on the war's progress from his command bunker. What he read both encouraged and disturbed him. Humanity was winning, but the cost was measured in more than lives and resources. The species that had reached for the stars with hope and wonder was becoming something darker. "We're not the same people who started this war," he confided to Admiral Foster during one of their private meetings. "I'm not sure I recognize what we've become." Foster's response was cold and practical. "We've become exactly what we needed to become. The Kithara wanted to teach us our place in the galaxy. They succeeded. Our place is wherever we choose to stand." By the end of the war's third year, human forces had recaptured 8 colonial worlds and were advancing steadily into the heart of Kithara space. The aliens who had once seemed invincible were retreating on all fronts. Their ancient empire was crumbling under assault from an enemy they had dismissed as primitive insects. Hegemon Zolther made one final attempt to end the conflict on terms favorable to his species. He transmitted a message directly to Earth, offering significant territorial concessions and massive reparations in exchange for peace. President Hayes' response was broadcast throughout human space. "You started this war because you thought we were weak. You were right about one thing: we were weak. We're not anymore. The war continues until every last Kithara is dead." The aliens had awakened something in humanity that they could not control or comprehend. The species that had once dreamed of peaceful coexistence was now committed to total extermination. There would be no negotiations, no mercy, and no survivors. The hunters had become the hunted, and the hunt would continue until extinction was achieved. Engineer Tony Martinez had been working without sleep for 3 days straight in the hidden weapons facility beneath Denver. His hands shook from too much caffeine as he made final adjustments to the latest crystal cracker prototype. The electromagnetic weapon was crude and ugly compared to Kithara technology, but it had one important advantage. It could kill the aliens. Range test successful, his assistant called out from the firing chamber. Target dissolved completely at 15 meters. The Kithara armor just fell apart like broken glass. Tony wiped sweat from his forehead and smiled for the first time in months. Dr. Amanda Price's research had been correct. The aliens' crystal-based biology created a fatal weakness that could be exploited with the right frequency generators. Start production immediately. I want 1,000 units ready within 2 weeks. 600 miles away, Sarah Brooks crouched in the ruins of what had been Riverside's capital city. The Kithara occupation force had turned the beautiful farming world into a poisoned wasteland, but they had not managed to kill all the humans. Small groups of survivors hid in the rubble and struck back whenever they could. Patrol coming in from the east, whispered her scout, a former farmer named Pete who had lost his wife and 3 children in the initial attack. 12 Kithara soldiers moving in standard formation. Sarah checked her improvised explosive device one more time. It was made from fertilizer and fuel cells taken from abandoned farm equipment. The blast would not be pretty, but it would get the job done. Remember, we hit them fast and disappear, no heroics. We want to kill them and live to kill more tomorrow. The Kithara patrol moved through the rubble with arrogant confidence. They had conquered this world months ago and faced only scattered resistance from primitive humans with crude weapons. The aliens did not expect organized ambush from an enemy that should have been extinct. Sarah triggered the explosive when the patrol reached the kill zone. The blast sent crystal shards flying in all directions as 3 Kithara soldiers were torn apart. The survivors turned to face their attackers but found only empty ruins. The humans had already vanished into hiding spots prepared weeks in advance. Search the area, ordered the Kithara squad leader in their harsh crystalline language. Find the vermin and kill them. But there was nothing to find. Sarah and her team had learned to move through the ruins like ghosts. They struck without warning and disappeared before the aliens could react. It was not honorable warfare by Kithara standards, but humans had stopped caring about honor. On the bridge of the captured Kithara vessel Retribution, Captain Sophie Clark studied the alien control systems with growing understanding. Her marine boarding team had taken the ship at enormous cost. 38 humans had died in the assault, but they had succeeded in capturing the first intact alien vessel. The ship's design was beautiful and terrifying. Everything was made from living crystal that responded to the crew's thoughts and emotions. The weapons could destroy cities and the engines could cross vast distances in days rather than months. But the aliens had never imagined that their enemies might steal their technology. The navigation system is completely different from ours, reported her chief engineer, a brilliant woman named Carol who had lost her family on Grant's Landing. But I think I understand the basic principles. If we can modify our neural interfaces, we might be able to control this ship. Dr. Kevin Stone led the team of scientists studying every inch of the captured vessel. They worked around the clock to understand Kithara technology and find ways to incorporate it into human weapon systems. The aliens had a 1,000-year head start, but humans were learning fast. Their power source is incredible, Stone reported to Earth Command. A single zenithium crystal the size of my fist generates more energy than our largest fusion reactors. But the interesting thing is how little they have left. This ship's reserves are almost depleted. The breakthrough that changed everything came from an unexpected source. 10-year-old Lucy Hayes was staying at a refugee shelter with other children, whose parents had died defending the colonies. She spent hours watching recorded battles on the public screens and asking questions that adults found annoying. Why do the crystal people always attack in straight lines? She asked her teacher one day. My daddy said you should never be predictable in a fight. The teacher mentioned Lucy's observation to a military advisor who passed it up the chain of command. Within hours, tactical analysts were studying every recorded engagement with fresh eyes. The child was right. Kithara battle formations were rigid and predictable. They had used the same strategies for centuries without variation. Commander Ryan, thou, now promoted to lead the reformed Earth Defense Fleet, took this information and developed new tactics specifically designed to exploit Kithara predictability. His pilots began using chaotic attack patterns that confused alien commanders who expected orderly formations. "Hit them from 6 directions at once," Bell instructed his squadron leaders. "Make them think there are more of us than there really are, force them to break formation, and they become vulnerable." The first major victory came during the liberation of the mining world. Haven, a Kithra occupation force of 50 ships, expected to face a desperate human attack from one direction. Instead, they found themselves surrounded by modified human vessels equipped with crystal crackers and hybrid weapon systems. The battle lasted only 4 hours, but it marked a turning point in the war. For the first time, humans had defeated a Kithra force without losing more ships than they destroyed. The alien survivors fled in panic, broadcasting confused reports about human tactics that made no sense according to their military doctrine. News of the victory spread quickly through human space and reached resistance cells on occupied worlds. Sarah Brooks received the transmission while hiding in a bombed-out school on Riverside. For the first time in months, she allowed herself to hope. "They can be beaten," she told her followers. "The crystal bastards are not invincible. We just have to fight smarter than they do." The liberation of Haven had another important result. Intelligence teams found detailed maps of Kithra territory and learned the locations of their major supply depots. The aliens had been conquering for so long they had grown careless about security. They never expected their enemies to capture. Strategic Information. Tony Martinez worked with captured alien technology to improve his crystal crackers. The new models had twice the range and 3 times the power of the originals. More importantly, they could be mass-produced using modified industrial equipment from the surviving human worlds. "Every resistance cell will have these weapons within 6 weeks," he promised General Powell. "The Kithra are about to learn what happens when you pick a fight with a species that builds better tools." Dr. Price made another crucial discovery while studying captured Kithra prisoners. The aliens' crystalline biology made them extremely vulnerable to certain viruses that could attack their silicon-based cellular structure. Working with the best biological weapons experts Earth could provide, she began developing targeted diseases. "We can make them sick," she explained to President Hayes. "Very sick. The same crystal structure that makes them strong also makes them defenseless against the right biological agents." As humanity entered the second year of war, they were no longer fighting for survival. They were fighting to win. The colonies had been lost but not forgotten. Every dead human would be avenged in Kithra blood. The aliens who had started this conflict expecting easy conquest now faced an enemy that learned from every defeat and adapted faster than they could counter. Humanity had discovered something that 47 previous species had missed. The Kithra could be beaten if you were willing to fight without honor, mercy, or restraint. Hegemon Zolther received increasingly disturbing reports from his commanders. Human resistance was growing stronger rather than weaker. Their technology was improving rapidly. Their tactics were becoming more sophisticated and deadly. For the first time in his 1,000-year life, Zolther began to wonder if the hegemony had made a mistake. The humans were supposed to be insects, easy to crush and forget. Instead, they were becoming something much more dangerous. They were becoming predators. The attack on New Denver came exactly 1 solar cycle after the Kithra ultimatum. Colony Administrator Lisa Carter was drinking coffee in her office when the first warning came through. "Unknown vessels approaching the system," her defense coordinator reported. 15 large ships moving at high speed. Lisa ran to the command center where screens showed the approaching alien fleet. The Kithra ships moved in perfect formation like a school of deadly fish. New Denver had 3 orbital defense platforms and a dozen patrol ships. Against 15 Kithra warships, it might as well have been 3 rocks and 12 paper airplanes. "Begin evacuation protocol 7, Lisa ordered. "All civilian transports launch immediately. Get as many people off planet as possible." The evacuation had been planned for weeks, but there were still 400,000 people on New Denver. The transport ships could only carry 50,000 in the first wave. The rest would have to wait and hope. The battle began in orbit above the planet. Human defense platforms fired everything they had at the approaching aliens. Energy beams and missiles reached out across space, but the Kithra ships absorbed the attacks without slowing down. Their return fire was devastating. The first defense platform exploded in a ball of flame that could be seen from the planet's surface. Commander Ryan Bell led the patrol ship squadron in a desperate attack. His 12 small ships were fast and maneuverable, but they carried weapons, designed for pirates and smugglers, not alien warships. All ships attack pattern Delta, he ordered over the radio. Hit them fast and keep moving. The human ships darted between the alien vessels like insects attacking giants. They scored a few hits on Kithra hulls, but the damage was minimal. One by one, the patrol ships were destroyed by alien weapons that fired beams of pure energy. Ryan watched his friends die on his screen as their ships turned to vapor. Down on the planet, Lisa Carter knew the battle was lost. The last 2 defense platforms were destroyed and only 3 patrol ships remained. She opened a channel to Earth Command. This is New Denver Control. We are under attack by Kithra forces. Our defenses are gone. They are landing troops on the surface. The alien landing craft were unlike anything in human experience. They moved through the atmosphere like living creatures and landed without making craters. Kithra soldiers poured out carrying weapons that hummed with energy. They were 8 feet tall and covered in natural crystal armor that reflected laser fire. Lisa organized the remaining security forces to defend the civilian shelters. 300 human security officers armed with standard weapons faced 2,000 alien warriors with technology beyond human understanding. The battle was over in 20 minutes. The Kithra did not take prisoners. They moved through New Denver methodically, killing every human they found. Men, women, and children were cut down by energy weapons that left nothing but ash. The aliens seemed to enjoy the work. Lisa's final transmission reached Earth just before the communication array was destroyed. They're not taking prisoners. They're sterilizing everything. Tell Earth we fought as hard as we could. The signal ended in static. On Earth, President Robert Hayes received news of New Denver's fall with growing horror. Satellite images showed the colony burning from orbit. Every human settlement had been reduced to smoking ruins. The Kithra had killed 400,000 people in 6 hours. Dr. Amanda Price worked frantically in her underground laboratory, studying video footage from the battle. She watched Kithra soldiers moving through the ruins and noticed something important. Their crystal armor has a specific molecular structure, she told her research team. If we could generate the right electromagnetic frequency, it might disrupt their cellular cohesion. General Chris Powell was organizing humanity's military response from a bunker beneath the Rocky Mountains. Earth's combined fleet numbered 87 ships of various sizes. Intelligence reports suggested the Kithra had over 300 vessels, and they were moving toward the next human colony. Grant's Landing is next, Powell told his staff. It's our largest industrial world. They'll want to destroy our manufacturing capability. Grant's Landing had been humanity's pride for 50 years. The world was covered in factories and shipyards that produced everything from farming equipment to spacecraft. 2 million people lived and worked there, including some of Earth's best engineers and technicians. The Kithra attack on Grant's Landing followed the same pattern as New Denver. Overwhelming orbital bombardment followed by ground forces that killed everything they found. But this time humanity was ready with something new. Dr. Price had managed to build 12 prototype electromagnetic weapons based on her analysis of Kithra biology. They were crude devices that barely worked, but they were better than nothing. Commander Ryan Bell, one of only 3 survivors from New Denver's defense, volunteered to test them in combat. The weapons work, Bell reported after a brief engagement near Grant's Landing. I saw a Kithra soldier's armor crack and the creature inside started bleeding. But the range is very short and they take too long to recharge. Despite the new weapons, Grant's Landing fell just like New Denver. The industrial world burned for 3 days before the fires finally died out. 2 million more humans were dead, and the Kithra moved on to their next target. Riverside was humanity's agricultural center. The world fed 4 other colonies with its massive farms that stretched across 3 continents. The Kithara attack was different this time. Instead of simply destroying everything, they used weapons that poisoned the soil and water. They wanted to make sure nothing would ever grow there again. As colony after colony fell, something began to change in the human survivors. The evacuation ships carried millions of refugees who had lost everything they owned and everyone they loved. These people were no longer interested in peaceful coexistence or diplomatic solutions. They wanted revenge. Sarah Brooks had been a teacher on Riverside before the Kithara turned her world into a wasteland. Now she organized civilian resistance groups on Earth and the remaining colonies. They think we're weak because we don't have their technology, she told her followers. But we know things they don't know. We know how to hate. The resistance cells began with simple sabotage and evolved into something much more dangerous. They learned to make weapons from farming tools and mining equipment. They studied Kithara behavior patterns and found weaknesses that could be exploited. Most importantly, they learned that the aliens had never fought an enemy that refused to surrender. Lieutenant Colonel Nick Torres led a successful raid on a Kithara supply depot and discovered something crucial. The aliens' advanced technology depended on a rare element called zenithium that they mined from conquered worlds. Intelligence analysis suggested they were running low on their reserves after 1,000 years of constant warfare, 8 months. After the war began, humanity had lost 8 colonies and 12 million people. But they had also learned to fight back. Dr. Price's electromagnetic weapons were being mass-produced in hidden factories. Commander Bell was training new pilots in unconventional tactics. Sarah Brooks had organized resistance cells on 20 worlds. President Hayes addressed the human survivors in a broadcast that reached every remaining colony. They started this war because they thought we were animals. They were wrong. We are something much more dangerous. We are humans with nothing left to lose. The Kithara had conquered 47 species in their 1,000-year history. None of those species had ever fought back after losing their first few worlds. The aliens expected humanity to surrender or die quietly like all the others. They were about to learn that humans were different. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UHS Defiance and watched the stars through the main screen. The year was 2387 and humans had spread across 12 star systems. They had built colonies and mining stations on distant worlds. Jake had been exploring space for 15 years, but he had never seen anything like what was coming toward his ship. The alien vessel was huge and dark with strange curves that hurt to look at. It moved without making any sound through space and seemed to bend light around its edges. Jake felt his heart beat faster as he watched it approach. This was the moment humanity had dreamed about for centuries. First contact with another intelligent species. "Open a channel," Jake told his communications officer. The young woman named Kate pressed buttons on her control panel and nodded. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the United Human Systems ship Defiance. We come in peace and wish to establish friendly contact with your people." The response came quickly in perfect English, though the voice sounded wrong somehow. "I am War Commander Zix of the Kithara Hegemony. You will prepare for boarding and inspection. Resistance will result in destruction." Jake looked around his bridge at his crew of 30 humans. They were scientists and explorers, not soldiers. The Defiance carried mining equipment and research tools, but only basic defensive weapons. "We are a peaceful exploration vessel. We mean you no harm. Perhaps we could meet and discuss trade agreements or cultural exchange." The alien voice came back colder than before. "You occupy worlds that belong to the hegemony. You build structures on our territory without permission. You will surrender immediately or face the consequences." Through the main screen, Jake could see more alien ships appearing from empty space. Each one was larger than the Defiance and covered in weapon ports that glowed with dangerous energy. He had explored space long enough to know when he was outgunned. We were not aware these worlds belonged to anyone. Our surveys showed no signs of intelligent life or civilization. We would be happy to negotiate boundaries and territorial agreements. Eh? New image appeared on the screen showing the interior of the alien ship. The creature standing there was 8 feet tall with 4 arms and skin that looked like living crystal. Its eyes were black holes in a face that seemed carved from blue-green stone. This was Hegemon Zalthar, supreme leader of the Kithara. "Negotiations are for equals," Zalthar said in a voice like breaking glass. "You are insects. We have ruled this sector for 1,000 years. We have conquered 47 species. You will evacuate all human settlements within 1 solar cycle and return to your birth world. Failure to comply will result in extermination." Jake felt anger rise in his chest. Humanity had worked for 200 years to reach the stars. They had built beautiful cities on distant worlds where children played under alien suns. Millions of people called those places home. We cannot abandon our colonies. Those worlds support human families. Surely we can find a peaceful solution. Zalthar made a sound that might have been laughter. "Your species is weak. Your technology is primitive. Your ships are toys. You have 1 solar cycle." The communication ended and the alien ships began to move away. Jake turned to his crew. "Get me a channel to Earth Command, Priority 1. Within minutes he was speaking to Admiral Helen Foster, who listened with growing horror as Jake described the encounter. "How many ships did you count?" she asked. "At least 20 in the immediate area. But Commander, their technology is far beyond ours. Their weapons could turn the Defiance into vapor in seconds." Admiral Foster was quiet for a long moment. "Return to Earth immediately. We need to prepare for the worst." As the Defiance turned toward home, Jake thought about the human colonies scattered across 12 star systems. New Denver had 500,000 people. Grant's Landing was home to the largest industrial complex outside of Earth. Riverside fed 3 other worlds with its massive farms. All of those people trusted Earth to protect them. The journey home took 6 days. During that time, Jake's communications officer, Kate, monitored alien transmissions. The Kithara were already moving. Their war fleets were heading toward human space. Like a dark tide, they moved with the confidence of a species that had never lost a war when the Defiance reached Earth orbit. Jake was called to an emergency meeting at the Pentagon. President Robert Hayes sat at the head of a table surrounded by military leaders and scientists. General Chris Powell showed holographic displays of Kithara ship movements. "They have over 300 vessels," Powell said. "Each one carries enough firepower to destroy a city. Their technology is at least 50 years ahead of ours. Our weapons barely scratch their hulls in the simulation." Dr. Amanda Price, Earth's top scientist, had been studying the limited data from Jake's encounter. Their biology appears to be silicon-based rather than carbon-based like ours. They seem to have natural armor and multiple redundant organs. Killing them will be extremely difficult. President Hayes looked around the room. "What are our options?" "General," Powell pulled up more displays. "We can evacuate the outer colonies and make a stand at Earth. We might delay them long enough to develop better weapons." "How long would that take?" Hayes asked. 5 years minimum, maybe 10. Dr. Price shook her head. "We don't have that time. Intelligence suggests they'll attack New Denver first. It's our most vulnerable colony." Jake stood up from his chair. "Mr. President, I spent 6 days listening to their communications. They're not just planning to drive us away. They want to wipe us out completely. They see us as vermin." The room fell silent. Through the windows they could see Earth turning slowly in space, blue and beautiful and home to 8 billion humans. Soon it might be the only human world left. President Hayes made his decision. "Send word to all colonies. Begin evacuation procedures immediately. Prepare our fleets for war." He paused and looked directly at Jake. "Captain Morrison, you've seen them up close. What do you think our chances are?" Jake thought about Zalthar's black eyes and crystal skin. He thought about ships that could appear from nowhere and weapons that could destroy cities. "Honestly, sir, they're going to kill us all unless we learn to fight dirtier than they do."